Hi guys, and welcome to my first Zelda Theory on my channel. The maps in Legend of Zelda series are some of the most inconsistent parts of the story and lore. But there are some theories out there trying to find out and combine different maps from Zelda games. Most of it usually is Zelda 1, Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess are the most common ones. Today, I'm going to be fitting the Zelda 1 map into the Great Plateau and seeing how it would affect the Zelda storyline. Yes, for this theory video, I'm going to be proving how the Zelda 1 map fits in the Gerudo and Great Plateau area of Breath of the Wild. The first and likely most obvious thing to point out is Spectacle Rock. Spectacle Rock has appeared in a lot of Zelda games, mostly 2D games, like A Link to the Past, Zelda 1, and Breath of the Wild. As you can see, Spectacle Rock is present in both Breath of the Wild and Zelda 1. Another thing that's present in Zelda 1 and Breath of the Wild is the canyon right next to the Spectacle Rock. This canyon is more like a narrow path in Zelda 1, but it's also present in Breath of the Wild, and it looks very similar. The one thing keeping this from being completely true would probably be how Death Mountain is inside of Spectacle Rock. But this can be explained by saying that Death Mountain might have been where it is in Breath of the Wild, but Spectacle Rock just had a tunnel that went underground to it. And that may be where Breath of the Wild 2 takes place. Because in the trailer, they seem to be in some underground tunnel. There seem to be a lot of similarities between Spectacle Rocks and Zelda 1 and Breath of the Wild. Next, we're going to be taking a look at the Dig Dog extension. But before we do that, I'd like to tell you that only a few percentage of you guys watching are actually subscribed. So if you like this content, be sure to subscribe and like the video. There are many references to Zelda 1 about the Dig Dog Extension Bridge, which is in western Hyrule, just west of the Great Plateau. One of which is that it's named after one of the bosses from Zelda 1, the Dig Dog. If you take a close look at the Dig Dogger extension bridge, then you can see how it matches up with the middle of the Zelda 1 map, with the two islands, as well as the two rivers that seem to pour into it on the upper east side and the bottom west side, match up with how the Great Plateau and the other river going into it would line up if it was on its side, which would be the same direction it would be facing in relation to Spectacle Rock. And while there are a few other geographical references to Zelda 1 in this area, including the Great Plateau and lining up with the green section of the Zelda 1 map, as well as the Gerudo and the mountainous part, and the graveyard, as well as the hill on top of the mountains just south of the Great Plateau with many trees on them. I'm going to go into more lore-related things to these two places. The pre-game story of Zelda 1 states that all of the Hyrule had been taken over by Ganon, except for a small section, which would fit this small area of in the southwestern Hyrule. Now, it has been found out by a few other Zelda theorists that the ruins of the Great Plateau's Temple of Time in Breath of the Wild almost perfectly match up with the castle town from Ocarina of Time. The reason this would be important to my theory is because if Castletown was where the Great Plateau Temple of Time was, then that would mean that it would still be in the same, likely still be in the same spot as it was in Ocarina of Time, which would make the Castletown right next to the area I'm talking about. This would make sense because when Ganon invaded Hyrule, the Hylians probably put their most defense into the castle, and is likely what fell last. There was probably a pretty large battle there, where all the Hylians fought against Ganon's forces, but they were no match. So the remaining Hylians went and fled and hid in caves around Hyrule, which there do happen to be a lot of caves in the area I'm talking about. If this section of Hyrule is the Zelda 1 map, then that would mean that the green part on the bottom separates the Great Plateau from the red mountainous part, which is the Gerudo. This would mean that where the old man in Breath of the Wild talks to you for the first time would be almost in the exact same spot that the old man in Zelda 1 gives you the sword. Another thing to consider is how similar the landscape looks between Zelda 1's cover art and Breath of the Wild's starting art. They look very similar landscapes. And even though technically Breath of the Wild's cover art and Zelda 1's cover art wouldn't be facing the same direction if this were the case, they still look like they're based off each other, and it kind of adds to my theory. If this is actually the Zelda 1 map, that would put the graveyard from the Zelda 1 map on the Stowry Plateau. There are a few lumps on the Stowry Plateau that look like they might be where gravestones were, which would make sense if it was a graveyard. It's even been confirmed by Eiji Aonuma that this ocean on the southeast of Hyrule in Zelda 1's map is actually Lake Hylia, which would make sense if this were the case with the maps. Although there's a lot of evidence that makes it seem like this is the case, there are a few things that are keeping this from being completely accurate. Some of these things include Death Mountain, which I've already mentioned, and how it's located across the map, and why Ganon is in Death Mountain if he's already taken over Hyrule Castle, which would be his goal, as well as the geography not being completely similar in some cases. Just to wrap things up, I'm going to tell you guys where the dungeons would be if this was accurate, where the dungeons from Zelda 1 would be in relation to the Breath of the Wild map. To start things off, we're going to do level 1 and 4 from Zelda 1. Level 1 would be about where the Hinox is sleeping from Breath of the Wild. And Dungeon 4 would be about where the shrine is under Dig Dog Extension. Level 2 would be located on the hill next to the Bokoblin base near Mount Hylia. And this makes sense because there's actually stairs going up to it in the original Zelda 1. 3 would be located almost exactly where Awa Daim Shrine is in Breath of the Wild. This is the shrine where you first unlock the Stasis Rune. Dungeon 5 in Zelda 1 would match up with the location of Rata U Shrine, which is right next to the stable in the south of Hyrule Field. Dungeon number 6 from Zelda 1 would be located in about the same spot as Geno Shrine from Breath of the Wild, which is right next to the graveyard. Since level 7 from Zelda 1 is located just one square below level 6, it would probably be located just to the southwest of Geno Shrine. The level 8 dungeon from Zelda 1 would be located about the same space as the Yowaka Ita Shrine from the Champion's Ballad on the Great Plateau would be located, in the middle of the forest on the Great Plateau. Thanks guys for watching my first ever Zelda Theory. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing if you like my content. Bye guys, see you later.